pulling some dinner down my throat before I came. All right, Stacey Conroy.
Patrick,
What up? Good to see you again.
everything above my head.
Mm-hmm.
So my
And good to see you a week ago at the OCD conference there.
yes, it's very interesting to have it in my backyard.
Yes, you could just drive to the conference. I mean, that's a weird one, isn't it? Yeah, you don't get to do
Yes,
that very often.
no, I stay in my own bed.
Yeah,
Although we do need to clarify, since we make enough jokes on the stream about my vision, that I did not drive. I took an Uber.
true. Yes, that would right. That would be good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That would be that'd be fascinating to watch. Actually, I think. Yeah.
Oh, I often say it would be the best thrill ride in Orlando, but it would be the last.
And the last, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. Yogurt Stain says, "Hello, my 21-year-old son has contamination OCD. He'll be in the shower for no less than 3 hours. You've tried everything to get him out. It's always a struggle. What would you suggest? Thank you." Well, first of all, is your son in therapy? Is the first question that I'd like to ask, because if not, that would be the first thing that I would suggest is, if you are not a therapist, Yogurt Stains, great name, by the way, Yogurt Stain. If you're not a therapist, I'm going to bet you're probably not using a lot of evidence-based techniques to try to work on getting your son out of the shower. So I don't know about you, Stacey, but that's my first suggestion is
Oh yeah, most certainly.
find a good evidence-based treatment for your son. Do some exposure and response prevention therapy for him. And then working with the therapist, be patient on them coming up with ways to come out of the shower, right? So sometimes we work on timers. Sometimes we work on, all right, we'll do 5 minutes less today and then 5 minutes less the next day and so on. We can add rewards for getting out early, consequences for not getting out, which are not punishments, by the way, right? We're not punishing people for having OCD. But sometimes what I've done with people who really do want to get less time with something is, and I love when it's an election season, because we've done things like, all right, for every minute over the shower or over the time of the shower that you want to be in, you will donate a dime per minute to the opposite political party for which you will be voting for in the next election. And I've had people write a $1 check or 70-cent check to the opposite party for which they're voting for and send it in the mail to them for that. And sometimes I like this because, what it does, and tell me what you think of this, Stacey, but people have lost their jobs, their relationships to OCD, and those don't seem to matter as much as the 70-cent check to the opposite political party for which they'll be voting for. That has gotten more anger out of people that they have to do that than some of these other things that I would like to think would be huge influences on life and yet don't seem to make the change. But what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. It's just one of those things. If people agree to that, commitment or that exposure response, and they don't follow through, and they've agreed to do that, it is very motivating. But I also agree with you. I mean, I would think loss of a job, relationship, not being able to connect with things that you value would be more motivating. But it is what it is. And if it's effective, run with it.
We like it. Yeah.
Yeah, we like it.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of what we do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mike Denver says, I put my hands to my eyes and move my fingers around when I am overwhelmed. I also do this when I am happy. Is this a compulsion or is this stimming? Either way, I would really like to stop this. It sounds like stimming to me, the way it's being described. compulsions are done to neutralize a thought or image or urge, or otherwise an obsession that we find to be intrusive, inappropriate, uncomfortable, shame building, disgusting, something of that nature. And that behavior is done to neutralize that. This does not sound like you're neutralizing something. This sounds more like a stimming kind of experience. But there are good habit reversal training that you can do, and therapists who do specialize in that as well too, who could be very helpful in that situation. Nova Rosa asks, "What's your opinion on NAC? It was recommended by my therapist, and you found it incredibly helpful." Do you know much about NAC? It's a supplement, I know, but
No, I don't know much about it. And what I always say with people is, supplements have their place, but they're not regulated. And to do your due diligence in, saw that somebody mentioned a study was done, but if it
mm-hmm.
was one study, is that sufficient? And, there are different types of studies. A randomized control study with placebo is the gold standard for studies. And so I said, do your due diligence, because supplements are not regulated. Now, that's not to say that some people might not find them helpful, but I always tell people, do your due diligence, make sure that the supplement doesn't interfere with any other medications that you're taking. Pharmacists are good for that. You should always tell your pharmacist anything you're taking that's over the counter or any supplements you're taking if you're on prescribed medications. And that's for anything, for mental health, for your cholesterol, for diabetes, because some of these things can have interactions. So you just need to be
Mm-hmm.
upfront, you know?
Absolutely. F says, "My OCD is so bad I'm refusing treatment due to intrusive thoughts. You canceled many NoCD sessions and refused the meds the psych gave because of harm OCD. What should I do?" Stacey, you want to take that one? Because your lived experience may come into play.
Well, you know, one of the things you should do is challenge yourself to engage in treatment, because OCD lies. OCD tells you things that are not true. And staying engaged in treatment is part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always easy to stay engaged in treatment. But outside of treatment, OCD will only get worse. Same with, substance use disorder. Outside of treatment, it will only get worse.
Mm-hmm. You know, OCD is great at interfering in OCD treatment by telling you a couple of interesting things, like if you have harm issues and they treat you for it, and then those harm thoughts don't bother you anymore, will that mean then that you really are a terrible person because you're no longer bothered by the harm thoughts? Now, Stacey, just so you know, I did a webinar on Wednesday, and during that webinar, someone talked about thought action fusion and how real it felt. So I wrote down on a piece of paper and showed it to the audience and said, "I hope I am the only person alive tomorrow morning when I wake up." So,
Oh,
Stacey, you should be dead by now.
I was wondering
I don't know
how I
why you're
died.
here, actually.
Yeah, I knew my
Yes.
death would be
Mm-hmm.
part of that. I just was waiting for it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah.
So, why didn't it come true, Stacey, when I, with full intent of malice, wrote that down on a piece of paper and shared it on the interwebs to
You
people, and it has
mean
been recorded and documented?
a
Why did
thought
it not come true?
was just a thought?
Well, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a truth. All thoughts should be true, aren't? Isn't that right? Isn't that how it goes? Every thought is true.
I don't know. I'm running through an index of all the inappropriate thoughts I can have in 30 seconds.
Okay.
That are just not going to be true.
They're not all true, though? Really? I
No,
mean,
no.
no.
And again, OCD does not tell us the truth. It lies.
Mm-hmm.
But it can lie very convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I
Okay.
realized is no matter what answer you give OCD, it's never satisfied. And no matter what it tells you will be the outcome, it doesn't come true. I'm not dead. Your thought did not come true.
Or we're all in the matrix and you are dead and you're a computer simulation to me. And maybe I am the only human being left alive and you're just a computer.
Quite
I mean, we
possible.
are talking over Zoom. I'm not actually seeing you in person right now. You might not be real.
No, I might not be.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to remember was it the red pill or the blue pill? Which one am I supposed to take? Because you know about me, substance abuse. It's always about the pills. No.
Yeah. It's all about the pills for you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a certain level of acceptance of uncertainty as part of the recovery process from OCD.
And SUD as well, too, right? Because,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
now you have to deal with feelings that you're going to be uncertain about that you haven't dealt with maybe for years because you've just stayed away from those feelings by getting drunk or high.
Yeah. The good news about getting into recovery from SUD, substance use disorder, is you get your feelings back. Do you know what the bad news is?
You get your feelings back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You do have to deal with your emotions because substance use takes them away. And in the beginning, that can give a sense of relief, just like compulsions can give a sense of relief, but that relief never lasts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we work on reducing substance use or not engaging in substance use or exposure response prevention and the response prevention aspect of not engaging in a compulsion.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, isn't it, that OCD will screw with everything, even OCD treatment. I mean, I don't know
Yes.
that we can say that enough for people to really understand, but it really is true. There is no limit to anywhere that OCD will go whatsoever.
No, no. And it will try to interfere with anything that you are doing. Your OCD treatment, your SUD treatment. If it's important to you, chances are your OCD will have something to say about it. It
Mm-hmm.
interferes with schoolwork. It interferes with, work, career, family, driving, sports. If it's important to you, then OCD might butt in there and have something to say.
Mm-hmm. Marin says she's having a hard time with worst case scenario scripts. She was starting them and always feel like she's doing them wrong or not long enough or not having the right intent. Could you help me with this? I think this is just another great example of OCD interfering in OCD treatment right here. That
Yes.
you're never going to do it the right way, at least in the way
Yep.
that OCD will say that it was right. It's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think is going on here. So do the script, allow it to not be totally right, and run with it. See how it
Mm-hmm.
goes. Mm-hmm. Going back to F said it's been months trying to seek help and your brain refuses because of the thoughts telling you therapists are here to hurt me and drugs are going to harm me. Well, if therapists could have hurt you, I would have hurt you last week when I would have killed you on Thursday morning by writing down, I'm going to be the only human being left alive. So this person attempted to kill you and did not, just so you know. Which means what? We don't really have all the power that you give us. We're we're not that powerful. We
No, we
don't
are
seem to
not.
be able to do that. Right? We are full of suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
but you must carry them through.
I used to tell people when I worked in substance use disorder exclusively that if I could meet you at the door and shove a cure down your throat, I would have done it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have that much power, whether it's SUD or OCD. Um, we do have things that we have seen be helpful to many people over the years, and we have evidence-based treatment. But it's a partnership, not a dictatorship.
I like that. Mm-hmm. I like that. Christina says OCD is tricky and a liar. She has thoughts that she's not supposed to have, uh, other thoughts besides these awful thoughts, then question herself why she's thinking like, this and knowing it's OCD. First of all, I don't think there's any thought that we're not supposed to have. Do you, Stacey?
No,
Is there such a thing as a thought we're not supposed to have?
no, there's just the thoughts that we do have.
Okay, that's what I would go to, but I think then people get caught up in this notion that, well, I'm not supposed to have this thought, and then they go down a rabbit hole of that, and it's just another way to stay trapped in OCD is by thinking I'm having thoughts that I'm not supposed to have.
Yes.
Now, I bet someone, if we were live, would say, wait, so you're telling me that I'm supposed to have thoughts about XYZ? No,
No.
we're not telling you are supposed to have thoughts or not supposed to have thoughts. We're just telling you have thoughts.
And
That's what
that's
you
what
have.
they are. Yep, you have
That is
thoughts.
what they are. So it's not that you are not supposed to have thoughts or you are supposed to have thoughts. Let's not go there because
Nope.
that's a waste of time,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The more you try to control them, the more you have them.
Right. Especially the ones that you don't want to have, because the more you try to not have a thought, the more you have the thought.
Yep.
So it's kind of where it is, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that, Christine, I just want to state first. You question yourself while you're thinking like this, even though you know it's OCD. Well, um, that's part of the condition, is to doubt and question yourself. So I don't care what you know, frankly. I really don't care what you know. Nor does OCD care what you know, because if OCD cared about what you knew, it would go with it and say, oh, well, we know this already, so we don't need to go anywhere with it. But that's not what happens, right? So,
No.
again, I don't care what you know. And that's probably weird for people to hear, that two therapists are telling you, we don't care what
You
you
care
know,
what you know. Yeah.
right?
Because there's nothing
Well,
that you know that will satisfy OCD.
that's right. That's right. I mean, Stacey, did you ever scratch the itch of OCD?
No.
Not
And I
once.
tried a lot
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
even
And it
yelling at
never
my
quite got
therapist.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have moral scrupulosity, and so I threw a few f bombs at my therapist and threw a few non-dangerous things at my therapist. Somebody gives you one of those stress balls. Well, yeah,
Mm-hmm. might have been might have been thrown in the general direction of,
yeah, it might
yeah.
have been thrown in the general direction. I don't know. Odds are I didn't see you sitting over there. Oops. But you know, so it's not therapy's not easy, but it's beneficial. I tell people all the time, the, what people see here is the finished product. And I can make jokes about it now, and I can
Mm-hmm.
be, calm and cool and collected. That was not the case. I mean, I used to go to therapy and think I'm literally gonna throw up before I even get there because I know what I'm going to do. And but I kept going back because I had this hope that there was something better. And I heard it from other people that there was something better, that recovery was possible. And that's one of the reasons why we have this OCD SUD recovery is possible tagline, because it is possible. But getting there can suck. Um, but I wouldn't give it back. And people who have recovery and have done their therapy say the same thing. I have never met anybody who says, I did the work, I feel I'm in a good place in my recovery, and I really wish I could have my SUD or OCD back. Doesn't happen. But
Yeah,
getting
that would be
there,
weird, wouldn't it?
yeah, well, it would be weird.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes you feel like you're never going to get out of it, but you can. You just may have to try some different approaches. And, sometimes you do need more than one episode of treatment. That's the other thing. People say, well, I went to therapy, it didn't work. Well, maybe you were in a different place. You weren't ready. You were getting, accommodation. The OCD, won that round, whatever it might be. Get back in therapy. Maybe get a different therapist. Make sure that they're using an evidence-based treatment. But it can take more than one episode of therapy to get where you need to go. And there's nothing wrong with a refresher. I was 13 years into my recovery when I had a lot of life stressors, and I went back into therapy, even though I had 13 years, and it literally helped me stay on track to maintain my recovery because I was struggling at that point. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help, but you need to make sure that it's working for you. And guess what? I'm not the therapist for everybody. I have been fired. It's okay. And,
Me too. Me too.
yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
But I just hope somebody finds somebody who is a good fit for them and to stay in the fight because it is worth it.
Gail says she recently changed her meds from one to another in June. She's had a massive flare up since then. Would we suggest changing tablets again? We can't give med advice, Gail, as we are not medication providers. But what we would suggest is this is a great question for your prescriber to review with them and talk to them about if that's the case.
And to be honest with what your experience has been on each medication.
Correct.
Don't
Jason
sugarcoat.
says, right, that would be a placebo. Medication joke there. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Couldn't resist. Yeah. But I'm sure. There we go. Why didn't the psychiatric community know more about OCD years ago? It seems like it took the internet, social media, etc., to reach the understanding we have today. Interesting question. I think there was a lot of focus on conditions that could either get you hospitalized, like psychosis, bipolar disorder. There were a lot of focus on conditions that people made an assumption could lead to suicide, like major depressive disorder, or have a high rate of potential for death, like anorexia does. It's the number one most dangerous condition to have. And I think that OCD got a couple of bad raps in the media about what it was, and it became kind of a joke or something that everybody had a little bit of. So it maybe wasn't as bad to have as other things.
Yeah. Don't get me started with I'm a little OCD. No, you're not. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You might be neat. You might be meticulous. You might like things done in a certain way. It's not OCD. OCD is an illness that is not something you want to have. And that really, ugh. But the other thing I will add is I think just like substance use disorder, you get some basic training when
Yeah.
you went through your grad school, whether it
Wait,
be,
wait. Don't be that generous about substance use training because I could have gone to a graduate school that I didn't have to take a substance abuse course.
oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. You get some basic
Yeah,
training that didn't
maybe
include OCD and it didn't include SUD.
substance use. Right. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. Yes. Correct.
So I think the
Mhm.
fact that OCD was treated with exposure and response prevention made that training something additionally added to a lot of programs. It might have been in a few, but for social work, that was not included back in the day, not at all. You barely got anything with exposure or substance use or at all. There's one class in my program and it was an elective. You know, even a trauma course was an elective when I went through school. Now I realize dinosaurs roam the earth and such, but
Well,
you know,
we're the same age, so they're for both of us. Yeah. So yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But I think that was part of the challenge for the OCD community in terms of how many therapists knew about OCD and got some. The training wasn't there because it was seen as a specialty, just like substance use disorder was seen as a subspecialty. So there was that focus on the more, you know, considered dangerous or things that got you hospitalized, and that's where most of the training went. And I think the training now is much more diverse in a lot of areas for people being trained. And I do think that things like this, such as YouTube and the webinars that we do and that you do on other nights, it has brought a whole bunch of understanding to a lot of different issues that we didn't have before. I mean, I remember having to go and request articles be sent to me from another library because that was the only copy of the article that existed. Or searching through microfilm.
God, I remember that too. Jeez.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Or
think there
you'd
is
drive
something.
to the other university just
Yeah,
because they had that journal and your university didn't,
didn't have
and
it.
so
Yeah,
you'd go there and you'd spend a nickel per sheet that you were photocopying, and you'd have to feed the nickels into the coin feeder one
yeah,
at a time in order to copy the page. Yeah.
yeah. So I think
I
there's a
killed a
lot of.
lot of trees in graduate school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
I think this forum does lend itself to people getting educated and then going out and asking for the treatment. And I
Yeah.
think it has made a difference in a lot of different areas. But
Yeah. Well, and let's not forget, too, prior to Meyer in 1966, the belief for people with OCD was they should do compulsions because that stopped them from actually following through on the obsessions. So that was
yeah,
only,
that's kind of
you
like in
know,
the 1960s, they used to take
six.
people who were
Yeah.
addicted to heroin out to the bar to teach them how to drink.
Hmm.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore either.
Yeah. And just uh, 20 years before that, they were taking an ice pick and sticking it into the sockets of people's eyes and just going in like this and giving
Yeah,
lobotomies. And they gave the Nobel Prize to the guy who invented
who
that,
developed
thinking it
it?
was
Yeah,
great.
yeah. When you know better, you do better.
Yeah. And we're a young science. We're still learning,
Yes.
right? So that's why. Daisy says, I'm diagnosed with OCD. I also have anxiety of not being invited. Sounds like some FOMO. Once I had a fear of not being invited by coworkers, so I drove back to work. I only did this once. Is this still OCD? I'm scared it's not. I wonder why you're scared if it is or isn't, because even if it isn't, it's still something that's treatable. So that's the good part about it. I don't know that I know enough about if there's an obsession with that and it's a compulsion necessarily, especially if you've only done it once. So that would be hard to say. And I don't want to diagnose somebody on one behavior about one thing. But could it fall in the genre of something of this nature? And is it treatable? Absolutely. That's what I would say for sure. Mhm. Elizabeth says, I don't believe you always need to do ERP. I have OCD and I work with it in a way where I just keep going on with the day and let the thoughts spin without paying attention. What do you think? That ERP isn't effective for me. I wish it was. Elizabeth, I'm going to challenge you and say, congratulations on doing fantastic ERP there in exactly what you described, because that's what we call ERP. Stacey, would you agree with me or am I missing something on that?
No, I
Okay.
would agree with you 100%. And,
Mhm.
and sometimes ERP is not a formal thing. Sometimes it just when it shows up and you don't engage in the compulsion and you go along with your day, that is still ERP. You know,
Correct. Because
it,
you're allowing for those things to be there and you're not doing compulsions. Congratulations. You're doing exposure and response prevention therapy.
And doing it
Applause to
well.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Excellent. Good job, Elizabeth. Without knowing it, you're the poster child for ERP. That is wonderful. Mindy asks, what is stemming? It's stimming, Mindy, stimming, STIMM, as in stimulating, like what a lot of people might do in situations where if you see people who might, either, flap their hands, it would be a stim potentially, or some people will hit themselves as a stim. There are various behaviors that people might do as a way of expressing emotion or trying to control emotion in some way. Not uncommon in people who have autism. You see stimming behaviors more frequently, but it's not only for autism that people with autism would have stimming behaviors. You can see them in other ways as well too. Lexus says, I tell myself my OCD is lying to me. Good. All the time, and it never seems to work or stick. I don't know what to tell myself at this point. Well, then you have to go beyond telling yourself and do the ERP. So it can't stop at telling yourself that. Then you have to go prove it, right? So if you tell yourself OCD is lying to me because it tells me that if I don't go and check the lights 3 times to make sure that they're truly off, that the house will burn down tonight. So I would say, well, I'm being lied to right now by being told that I need to do that, and I'm not going to go do that. And then what am I going to do? I'm going to learn that I can handle that. So that's what I'm going to do. So that's it. It can't just be telling yourself. It has to be the behavioral piece as well too. Sammy says, I'm curious if anyone has the experience compulsion where they talk to themselves for hours. It's like I get this question in my mind, why would they believe you? And I have to explain myself. Stacey, anything like that?
Well, I live alone, so I talk to myself all the time. But I don't
Oh,
think it's
okay.
procedure related.
I do too, actually, now that I
Yeah,
think about it.
so, but I get the concept. Yes, it's getting something stuck in your head that you then, whether it's internal to your head or out loud, that you ruminate about, and you try to solve it in some way to convince yourself, but you don't ever seem to get there. So you keep going and going and going and going and going. And so, in that respect, yes. But there's never an answer again that is satisfying when you do that, and you can get very stuck on stuff. I would always come up with something where, okay, I can't find an answer, so I'll go do X, Y, and Z, and that will solve it. And so, whether you're continuing to have the conversation or run through it mentally, or you come up with something that you do as a compulsion, then to stop that process from moving forward, which is more of what I would do after a while. And I came up with some weird compulsive ritual that I would do to somehow clear that from being a problem. But inevitably it came back because that only works for a little while. But yeah, you can get
The
stuck
other
on
thing,
stuff.
yeah, the other thing I've seen people with OCD do is review conversations and things over and over and say, well, if I had said this, then maybe
Oh
they
yeah,
would have said that, and then the conversation would have gone this way, and then if it did, then they could have
then
said
I
this,
would
and
have
then
done
I would have
this,
said
and then I would
that,
have done that.
and then it would
Yeah,
have been yeah, and
yeah. You can
it
spend
just
hours doing that as well,
yeah, going
and
down a
then you can
rabbit
go
hole
back
there.
and say, "But if I had said this,"
Yeah,
yeah, and then
so
you wonder why
not
you
a
can't sleep and it's 3 a.m.
there you go.
Yeah.
That is it. Mindy says yes. Please check with your doctors before starting supplements. They can interact with medications. Absolutely. Santo says, I've been in therapy on and off for 40 years for OCD and general anxiety. I tried almost every med for it. I need help with my OCD and anxiety. Well, Santos, um, what you say there, you've been in therapy on and off for 40 years and general anxiety. You tried almost every. I wonder if you've done exposure and response prevention therapy. It does not say there if that is the case or not. So that's always my first suggestion that anybody would try to do would be a good dose of a healthy ERP. And then if you've tried every medication for it, also check. Let's just talk about for a moment. If you go to the International OCD Foundation, they have a list there of medications that are good for OCD and the typical dosages. Santo, depending if you've seen somebody who is a specialist in OCD or not, you may never have been prescribed the level of OCD medication that would have actually been effective. So, one medication, for example, at the typical level for depression might go up to 20 to 40, high at the 60 range. But for that same medication for OCD, the low range is 80 and the high is 120. So if your doctors are used to it as an antidepressant and only prescribe it to the antidepressant level, you may never have gotten quite the level that you need. Oh, this has been a big one on the NoCD community recently too. How do you know if it's a sexual orientation OCD or your sexuality is actually changing? Some people think I'm gay, but I don't think I am. Is this due to how I act and avoid with the OCD? It's very out of control. Well, first of all, we're not going to be able to tell you what your orientation is. I just want to say that. And we know that there are some people who are judgy and will say things. Heck, back in the 80s, Stacey and I remember, because we're old, the phrase gay was just a very common thing that everybody said about everything back in those days as well, too. Happily, we don't do that anymore. But boy, you remember those days, when
Oh
everything was,
yeah.
yeah, you know. So, uh, yeah. Well, so at least we're not there anymore. But here's the thing: we're not going to be able to answer if it's your sexual orientation OCD or your sexuality is actually changing in a 3 sentence question, right? That's not going to happen. First of all, number two, even if we knew you for hours and we told you it was one or the other, you wouldn't believe us
No.
because OCD is the doubting disorder and would doubt absolutely everything about it as well too. So one thing that I've been saying, but Stacey, I want to get you in here on this is why does it really matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the big deal? Why do you have to have an answer for that? Why not, if you find somebody attractive, date them, whoever
Hmm.
they are?
Yes.
Why does it matter?
Why does it matter?
Take it, Stacey. Oh,
Well, yeah. Why does it matter? It matters because OCD is telling you this matters.
oh yes, 100%.
And
Yeah.
we've already established OCD doesn't tell the truth. And no answer you give OCD will be satisfied,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But if you're attracted to a person, date them. And if you're not,
Yeah.
don't.
And if you go on a date with them and you don't have the feelings that you like, don't date them again.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the amount of time and energy that people waste trying to have an answer to something when they have OCD
Oh.
is incredible. Incredible.
If I had $1 back for every minute I spent thinking
You'd be a
about,
millionaire.
oh, I could retire right now. It would
Mm-hmm.
be peace out. Bye bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, seriously, you have spent. I don't think I'm exaggerating here. At least 100,000 minutes of your life trying to figure out answers to things
Oh,
that can't be answered.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt. And well, yeah, I think about it. It's mind blowing how much time I spent and how much time I spent trying to avoid that through substances as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I wasn't thinking about answers I couldn't find, I was thinking about ways to shut things down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, you add those two up, I'd be a millionaire and I'd retire immediately.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. like I said, it's interesting because I've seen more chatter on this topic on the NoCD community even than a lot of other and there's one other subtype, but this one has just been going gangbusters lately, where people are are spending this time trying to figure this all out. And I'm always fascinated when people try to figure out things that are unfigureoutable, right? And Stacey, one time even we were, I don't know if it was one of the ones you and I did or if it was one of my Wednesday ones where I said, I treated somebody who had this subtype, and then, you know, 20 years later, they, you know, thought, well, maybe now I do find an attraction to something that I was afraid of back then. And the shitstorm that created with some people, the emails that I got about, I was told by a therapist that once I had sexual orientation OCD themes that I could never then change my mind. I was like, well, I, who the hell told you that? I mean, I could,
Yeah.
you know, I can't. I have been straight my whole life. I have been married to a beautiful woman. Uh, I But I have no guarantee that I won't meet a guy tomorrow who I think is the hottest thing in the world and be like, geez, what have I been missing out on? I mean, it could happen.
It could.
Yeah.
And I'm the opposite. I've been
Right.
gay my whole life. I could meet a man who thinks,
Yeah.
but whoa, hold on. Let me consider this.
Yeah. Right.
No.
And you have OCD, and you can say that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you did meet that man, I know you well enough to be like, oh, what the hell? I'm going to go on a date.
Why not?
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge it. If it shows up, life is to be enjoyed.
Yes.
And if something makes you happy.
So, I just dislike that OCD pigeonholes you into, you can only be one thing and that's it. And you have to know exactly what it is. And it has to be absolute and pure of whatever kind it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's not life. OCD is a Stepford world, right?
Yeah.
It is not life. That's why you and I know that we can't even debate OCD, because OCD doesn't follow the logic that you and I follow in the debates that we do.
No. There is no logic to OCD.
Imagine being in court and saying, Your Honor, you know why I know why this person's guilty? Because they said so.
Yeah.
Well, who's they? Oh, Your Honor, they know everything. They said it. And so therefore they know.
Yes.
And since they know, it is true.
Yes.
Well, okay then. You are guilty because they have defined you as being guilty and they said so. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Right. This is just another absolute example of OCD saying you must have an absolute answer, even though there isn't one. Okay. Elizabeth says, I guess I'll do real exposures often and don't realize it, so maybe that's here. Oh, yeah, yep, she caught up on it.
Yep.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mike asked, does microdosing or mushroom therapy help with OCD? There's doing a ton of research on that right now, but we don't know yet because there's not enough double-blind studies for us to know. So.
Right.
Brittany
well, and the other thing I'll add there is microdosing on mushrooms. Mushrooms are still illegal, so be mindful of that because it can come with a whole bunch of consequences that were unintended. So
this is true. Yes,
if you're truly interested in that, there are clinical trials. You could try to get into a clinical trial working on those things, and so you would be doing it legally.
Mm-hmm. Brittany says, how do I overcome death OCD when I know my dog will die someday? Well, Brittany, first of all, I'm glad you know that your dog will die one day, because some people refuse to even accept that. Right? So you're a step ahead of some people who say, nope, nope, they're never going to die. It's never going to happen. Brittany, I'm wondering if I should have left my wife when she was diagnosed with cancer, since I knew she was going to die. Would it have been better for me just to be away from her and suffer on her own so that I didn't have to deal with it? I say that not in jest. I say that in all seriousness, because in doing so, and Stacey was around for all of this, she knows everything I was going through. In doing this, I found a strength that I didn't know that I had, that got me through dealing with all of the things that we had to deal with. And Brittany, what I'm worried about is that OCD has sent you a message that says, you, Brittany, are weak. You, Brittany, will not be able to handle this. So you, Brittany, need to fear this and start thinking about it constantly. And maybe in thinking about it starting now, over the next 7 years, you can come up with every single permutation of anything that might happen once your dog dies, so that when your dog does die, you'll be 100% ready for the death of your dog. But I will promise you this: no one is ever 100% ready for anything.
No.
And therefore, on the day of the death of your dog, you will still be sad. You will still feel hurt. And that's okay. You know why? Because you're a human. And humans feel sadness. And we mourn things. And we feel pain. And we feel hurt. I knew Susan was going to die for 6 years. From the day I saw her scan, I was like, that's it. There is no coming back from that. And I say this with all seriousness. And again, Stacey can vouch for me. When she died, I was relieved. I was filled with joy, actually. And it wasn't because I was happy she was dead. I was happy that she was not suffering anymore. She was in so much pain, and it was so terrible. Oh God, that I was relieved. I did not cry or tear up. I was with her when she died. The moment she died, I was there when they pronounced her dead, and I just felt this sense of relief that, wow, finally she is not suffering anymore. It is over for her. And I was just filled with this sense of gosh, it's hard to put into words really, but just this overwhelming feeling of like a weight being lifted off of me, that I didn't have to worry about her falling anymore. I didn't have to worry about her crying anymore, because she would just randomly start bawling and screaming because of the pain that would flare up inside of her. And I just thought, finally, she's at peace for the first time in years. And that just brought a smile to my face, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all of this, that you're already telling yourself you're not going to be able to handle this when you don't actually know that that's the case either.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've had pets, Stacey, or not, or lost any pets.
I have had pets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
Matter of
not.
fact, the family dog. We had two family dogs over the course of time, and they both lived a very long life, and both, one passed away when I was in middle school, and I took the day off from school, which I got a call from the school asking why I wasn't in school, and I said the dog died, and the person on the other end said, "Is that really a reason to stay home?" I said, It is in this house. And I said, you want to talk to my mom? But yeah, we're staying home.
Yeah.
You know, because we were grieving the loss. But, you know, the other dog lived a very long time, but that dog happened to go deaf and blind. And, you know, actually, because I was living up where it snowed at the time, dog would stand there, like look at you, like, I am not going out in the snow. We picked the dog up, put it down, would do his business, and then look at like, okay, pick me back up. And we did that for like the last year of the dog's life. But yeah, you will feel, but there's a time for everything.
Yes.
And it's something that we're all going to face. You know, we face it through the loss of pets and friends and family, and then one day will be our time. You know,
right. Another jerky thing of OCD telling you, don't enjoy the dog now.
Oh yeah.
Start worrying about the death of the dog now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I've said to people is, you can spend the rest of your life sitting next to your tombstone, wondering when you're going to be 6 feet under it, or you could have a great time and arrive on the day of your death of your tombstone going, well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Either way, you're going to be 6 feet under it. You just have a choice of what
How
you
you
want
wanna
to do
spend your
until
time.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to do option 2, just have a great time until I 6 feet under. But OCD says no. No, you must sit next to your tombstone until you die, just to make sure that you don't have anything bad ever happen to you or anybody else.
Yep. And the things that we come to believe, like, you know, I'm a roller coaster fan. And
Huge.
they have started to design roller coasters without the shoulder restraints. They just have a lap bar. So, and these things go upside down 7 or 8 times, and it's fabulous. And I have my hands up the whole time. And somebody said to me once, who was riding next to me, they said, how can you not hold on? I said, do you think if that lap restraint gives way that you holding on is going to save your life?
Yeah, right. No.
I got news for you. I understand physics. You'll be just as dead as me.
Your hands are not that strong. Those G forces are going to rip you away.
You'll be just as dead. So throw your hands up and have a good time.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So,
last one for the night. Here we go. How, does OCD and guilt go hand in hand? Of course.
Oh. Yeah.
I was suffering of religious OCD, but sometimes get guilty about whether I am a good mom of 2 babies, 7 and 3 years old. Well, absolutely, 1,000%. The DSM definition is bad because it only says anxiety or distress, but it missed because it's also guilt and shame and disgust and any other uncomfortable emotion as well, too. And Stacey, again, your lived experience here may be, I'm going to bet you dealt with guilt at times.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes. In 8 ways from Sunday. Guilt about having OCD and SUD, guilt about thoughts that I had, guilt about compulsions, not following through, not being available, not getting things done because I was too busy the night before, staying up, making sure that the world didn't end. All of that. Guilt about the thoughts, because I had a lot of harm OCD. And so I would have thoughts about, you know, I'm going to harm somebody else. And then I'd be guilty about even having the thought. So yes, guilt, shame, disgust, all of that is very real and part of OCD.
Yeah. Right.
And it's part of what makes it so hard.
Yeah. Angela says, you know, sometimes I scream, but I try not to use swear words. Well, I don't know any mom that hasn't screamed. So there we go for that. And she loves her kid much. You know, OCD says you're the worst parent, you're the worst son, you're the worst daughter, you're the worst friend. You're the worst of everything. Yep. OCD has never accused anyone of being great or good. You know,
really?
I'm waiting, Stacey. Though I mean, I can't imagine what it'd be like. I keep doing compulsions because I'm afraid I'm so good.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so awesome, so I keep doing compulsions just so my awesomeness doesn't rub off on anybody else.
just to keep me in check.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Otherwise, I'll just be too awesome for everybody if
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
case, right? I've I've never seen it. I've never dealt with it. I don't think I
No,
ever will either. That's just not the way that it rolls. That's not what OCD does, right?
not at all. If you're not doing it wrong, just it's the way it rolls. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still waiting too.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, before we go, any parting thoughts for all of our friends who have listened to us for the last hour?
Well, as always, I put a plug in for the website,
Please, let's talk a little bit about the website. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
OCDSUD.com. We put some resources up there. You can pick and choose. There's some videos up there. Um, there's links to things that you've done, things that we've done together, books, resources, websites, International OCD Foundation, the SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration's treatment locator, particularly for substance use disorder. So it's a good set of resources. It's not everything, but it's a good place to start if you're looking for information on OCD and SUD and to start on a recovery journey.
Yeah. And a little plug for our host tonight, NoCD. NoCD, an online platform for the treatment of obsessive compulsive disorder. If you're looking for help for OCD or other related conditions like hoarding or BFRBs or tics, and ancillary things that come along with OCD like anxiety, depression, things of that nature, check us out at nocd.com. One thing that I want to mention too that we do, and I haven't talked about it a
Yeah.
little bit, is our NoCD 411 sessions. Sometimes I ask a lot of questions on these. We can't get to everything. If you're interested in having an hour with an OCD expert, check us out at nocd.com and tell our care team that you're interested in a NoCD 411 session. That can get you a 1 hour session with one of our team members, and they will talk to you and answer any and all questions that you have. It's not a therapy session, just more of an information kind of provision and you to get some questions out and talk to an expert in this as well too. That being said, we thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, NoCD. And I think soon we're going to be moving this to one of my Wednesday ones. We're going to kind of consolidate on Wednesdays. So that may start in September, everybody. So Stacey and I will still be keeping the band together. We're just going to move our concert to a different night of the week. So we'll get that figured out and announced in the next couple of weeks and let everybody know. But otherwise, we thank you all for joining us tonight, and we will see you again soon. Have a good one, everybody. Be well, be good to yourself, and hey, don't listen